Hey guys, Wilson here with Cabinet Startup, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the actual necessary technical steps that are required to start a business. Now, if you've been watching our channel or you've seen some of the other content we've created, you know that I am a big proponent of understanding why you want to start a business and having some clarity around the skill set you're going to need to start the business before you get to setting up things like LLCs and the paperwork side of things. But if you've already got that, right, if you know why you're starting a business, you know exactly what you're going to do, but you want to know the exact steps that you need in terms of, setting this up the proper way legally, then this is the right video for you. And before we get started, if you like what you see here or you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on the channel, let us know that we're providing valuable content. Getting straight into it, you've got your idea, you know what you're going to do for your business, all of that set up, and the next question is, okay, cool, how do I actually make this thing legitimate? Like, how do I take this from an idea to a real live functional business? So step one, especially if you're in the trades, is to go out and research your local licensing requirements. And the reason this is so important is because this varies wildly from state to state, and it's even more important if you're sitting on the border, right? So like if you're right on the border of, say, North Carolina and Virginia, right? You would want to know if the rules are going to be the same between those and how quickly you can transition, or if you're just going to be stuck in one side. But separate from that, the reason it's so important to do this first is some places are significantly harder to get licenses for than others. I can tell you, for example, if you're wanting to work in the trades and you live in California, you're going to have a hell of a time getting that set up compared to somebody that lives in Texas. Now, that's not necessarily good or bad, it's a matter of perspective, right? If you are willing to go through the extra work of getting that license, having more steps is great because it means less competition to some degree, right? But if you're new at this and you're trying to get involved, sometimes that extra step can be a disadvantage. So there's pros and cons to each. Really, it's about how you're looking at it. But given that there are certain restrictions, in some states you have to have 4 years of experience before you can open your own business. You want to know these requirements. You want to know these challenges before you ever go out and purchase your LLC, purchase your insurance, purchase, ads and business cards and all of this stuff. Because trust me, every one of those companies will take your money. And if you have spent, $2,000 or $3,000 getting the business set up only to later find out that you can't legally operate in your area, well, it's going to suck, right? That's not fun for anybody. So the first step is to go check your local licensing requirements. You need to check your city, your county, and your state. Number two, once you understand the local licensing requirements and you're confident that you can actually get approved for those, the next thing is choosing your name. And there's two parts that I want to discuss here when you're looking at your name. The first is, for most people, I think this is changing, but historically it's like if I'm going to start a business and my name's Wilson Smith, I'm going to call it, Smith's Cabinet Painting, or, Wilson's Home Renovations, whatever the case. We like to name things after ourselves as people. But that's not always what's best for your company, right? We recommend strongly, if you're going to come up with a name, come up with a name that actually conveys very clearly the values that you represent and the service that you actually do. Right? It's going to make a massive difference. When somebody hears, perfectionist cabinet coatings, they know exactly what the heck I do. If somebody hears, Wilson's Coatings, they're like, oh, well, what is Wilson Coating? And like, is it coats that Wilson makes? Is he a coating factory? Like, we don't want to create opportunities for our customers to be confused. So we want to name it something that, again, conveys value and lets them know exactly what it is that we do. The second thing is you want to search and make sure you can find a domain name that matches your actual business name before you go through this process. Because you don't want to have a name that doesn't match your website. That is super confusing. It makes it harder for customers to find you. And then it's frustrating because you will have already filled out all of this paperwork. You already have the legal entity. You already have all of this stuff set up, but you won't be able to get a website that matches. And so we want to avoid that at all costs. So we want to find a name and make sure that we can have the domain name that matches our business name. All right? Step 3. Once we've got our research, we've got our name, we want to actually go file for our corporate entity. Now, When you're talking about corporate entities, this is really important. There are a number of different options. And the type of corporate entity that you want is probably going to vary based on your goals. For example, I have several businesses that are set up as S-Corps. I have other businesses that are set up as LLCs. And the reason we've chosen those different designations really depends on what the goal and intention was behind that business. Regardless of what it is that you select, having the corporate entity is really important, right? When you take on a business, you take on certain risks. And the purpose of the corporation, of that entity, is to protect you from some of those risks. So if there's a major mishap, right, the company itself may go bankrupt, but the corporate entity enables you to protect your own personal assets, so that just because the company goes bankrupt doesn't mean that you as an individual has to go bankrupt. And that is really important because, for the most part, we all think that we're never going to get struck by lightning, right? And statistically, most of us won't. But if you're the one that does get struck by lightning, you want to make sure that you've got everything in place to prevent you from succumbing to that accident, right? You want to survive. And so having that corporate entity is going to help with that. The second thing is you do want to understand that, the difficulty and the challenges that come from actually getting your corporate entity vary a lot from state to state. So I recommend talking to somebody that can help, maybe if you're accountant, because you need to figure out what entity you want to do anyways, or there are a lot of services that you can use. We actually are I'll provide a link in this video to our Start a Business course. You can actually sign in, go through, and we'll actually help you with some of that, show you who we like to use and why we like to use and what that looks like. Number 4, we want to go and apply for the local licenses. Now, I think it's really important to go ahead, we research first, then we fill out getting our name, getting the LLC before we apply. A lot of times when you're applying for the licenses, you may need to have your company information, all the contact on there, and it's going to be much harder to do that if you don't already have all of that set up. The other thing is we don't want to have to do this stuff twice, right? So we do the research, we get the name, we file for the entity, and then we actually go out and get the licenses. When it comes to licenses, just as a side note, one thing that you do want to keep in mind, licensing requirements, again, like we talked about, they do vary a lot from place to place. Make sure that when you're checking, like I always recommend go into the business office and ask them directly, like, hey, do I have anything I need? Is there anything I could be missing? Those people want to help you, right? And also the government makes money from licenses, so they are incentivized to help you give them money. It's a win-win situation. So make sure you check on that. Okay, number 5, you need to go set up your business bank account. Now, there are a lot of different business bank accounts out there. For the trades specifically, I recommend getting a local bank. And I recommend getting a local bank for a couple of reasons. Number 1, big banks have been caught many times doing all kinds of sketchy things with fees. One of the great examples is Bank of America got caught basically changing the order in which they took transactions out so they could charge people more overdraft fees. I'm hoping that your business never overdrafts, but in the beginning, we want to avoid stuff that's going to make our lives harder. So I like to find small, local credit unions, right? Go in there, meet somebody, have somebody as your direct account advisor, somebody that you can build a relationship with. The second thing is having a separate bank account creates a lot of great things for you as a business owner. One, it enables you to more easily separate your personal and your business finances. This is really important because being able to know exactly what your business numbers are allows you as a business owner to more effectively plan, more effectively budget for growing and scaling, and also lets you see, okay, maybe the business is doing great, but my personal finances are a little bit off, or maybe my personal finances are great, but my business is all over the place. When the two are intermingled, it makes discovering where an actual problem is significantly harder. The other thing is if your business finances are very closely intertwined with your personal finances, you can actually run a higher risk of being personally liable for damages created by your business. So we talked about the corporate entity creating a layer of protection, right? If your personal finances and your business finances are so intertwined that people can't tell the difference, they'll call that piercing the corporate veil, and then they can come after your money too. This is not so you can protect yourself to get away with doing bad things. This is because sometimes accidents happen. Like sometimes issues happen within your business, you need to be protected as an individual for yourself and for your family to make sure if something does go wrong, you personally are not going to end up having to pay something that you can't afford. Actually, as a good segue to that, number 6, you need insurance. You need business insurance. Now, with business insurance, one, you want to make sure that you've got enough to cover costs. I know for like most of my businesses, it's $1 million per occurrence and up to 2 occurrences at that rate. So essentially $2 million a year in coverage. And that's basically for every business. And there's a reason why we selected that number, but ultimately the requirements for your particular business will vary from state to state, just like the licensing requirements, right? In some places, you'll also have to be bonded. It's really important that you go and figure out what that is for your area and then go get an insurance policy to protect you. I recommend calling a couple of different agents and just ask them like, hey, this is what I'm doing for my business. What would you recommend and why? About how much would that cost? Get a couple of quotes and then pick the guy that was most responsive, right? Obviously, I think trustworthiness is huge, but in business, when I have a problem, I want the people that I am working with to be the types of people to call back quickly, right? I want them to be the type of people that are quick to respond so that we can solve these problems. So, go with the person that has, competitive rates but communicates most effectively. Once that's set up, right, you've got all the basics for your business to be able to actually go out and do work, right? Insurance, bank account, licensing. The next step is related to how you're going to actually go out and get business. And if you followed our content for a while, you know that I think very strongly that the number one most important thing that you need to have a successful business is someone willing to pay you, right? Everything else is really secondary. And so the next step that I think is really important is going and setting up that website. You already should have your domain at this point. And when it comes to websites, a lot of people overcomplicate things. They really do. They get really excited about all the cool stuff they can have, or the features and the responsiveness, and this little thing jiggles or bounces when you click on it, and it's a waste of energy for the most part, especially in the trades. Look, what we're doing is a service that people need. They don't care if a button bounces when they click on it. What they care about is the website is clean, crisp, and visually appealing, right? For your purposes, it does make sense to have a little bit of UI and UX, enough so that you know that people are going to follow the right path to actually convert, right? And then understand that the purpose of your website for a lot of times is for people to be able to ascertain whether or not you are legitimate. So it's not about having a bunch of fancy stuff. It's about having something that is good enough for people to go, okay, this is clearly a real business. They've spent some time on it, and clean enough that they go, oh, wow, okay, this person actually cares. Okay, you don't have to overthink a website. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You want something that actually converts. The next step, once you've got your website, part 8, is you're going to want to go set up your Facebook and Instagram page. And I like for people to start with Facebook and Instagram because they're oftentimes the most popular in terms of social media. When you're first launching your business, depending on the amount of budget that you have, a lot of your initial business is probably going to come either from family and friends or from people your family and friends told. One of the easiest ways to do that is through Facebook, right? You create a Facebook page. There's a couple important pieces that you want to hit, like for sure when you make sure you get a Facebook page, make sure it's got photos, right? You want to make sure that your information is on there so people can go to that page and see who you are, right? Call you, email you. You want to make sure all your contact information is there. And then the last thing is you want to share it with frigging everyone. Like you want to just shy of spamming this thing out, and it's not like, hey, you need to be annoying about it, but you do need to announce to the world, like, hey, world, my name is Wilson. I started a business. What we do is we refinish cabinets, and we are the best in the area. If you want to, change your kitchen, send us a message. Create that on your page, share it on your personal page, send it to all of your friends, and just let them know, like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. Because one of the things that drives me crazy is I will see people start a business and I'm like, okay, well, how do people know about you? Like, well, I haven't told anybody yet. If you haven't told anybody, how would anybody know? Are you doing advertising? Well, no, I don't have any money. It's like, well, dude, at that path, pretty soon you won't have a business either, it's important that you share, and you share with confidence. And the nice thing is with Instagram and Facebook are very similar, right? So while you're setting up your Facebook, you can use a lot of the same content for the Instagram. It's owned by the same platform. We've got our website set up. We've got our Facebook and Instagram set up. We have announced to the world that we've got our business. The next step is setting up local registries. Now, me personally, I pay somebody to do all of this for me because there's like hundreds, right? But if you're going to set up your local registries, there are a couple important ones I think everybody should set up, and this is where I would start. Set up Yelp. All the stuff that you put on your Facebook page, throw it on your Yelp. Facebook, your Facebook business, right? So it's not just having a page, but set up your Facebook business. Set up Google Maps. Set up Apple Maps, right? And then if you have something that's really popular locally, I would look for that as well. You know, you may set up a Home Advisor account, a Thumbtack account. I would check for anything that you think people might actually look for a service provider on, and I would go set up an account there. Because it doesn't take anything for you to set that stuff up. And if it's there and they happen to come across you, again, we're trying to increase the number of ways that people can find us. After you've got your local registry set up, okay, so you've set up your website, you've set up your Facebook page, you've set up your local registry so people find you, I strongly recommend signing up for a lead service. Here's the truth. Your business is easier to run when you have customers, right? Think about it. In order to get customers, you have to get leads. In the very beginning, one of the biggest I wouldn't call it a mistake per se, but one of the biggest frustrations we see with new business owners is they start the business, they tell all of their friends. Their friends send them some business. They're like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's working. It's going to go this way for forever. And then they run out of that initial circle of friends, and all of a sudden they have no business at all. And then they have to either start passing out business cards like crazy, or they have to try and figure out how to do Facebook ads, which is a phenomenal way of getting leads, but also expensive. When you're faced with those challenges, sometimes it is actually easier to go to a company that does that for a living and say, hey, you guys sell leads. I'll buy your leads. Now, it's really important to understand if you're going to purchase leads, you need to have a system in place for closing those leads. And you have a system in place for converting those. And if you need some help with that, we've got an episode in our podcast where we talk in detail about that sales process and what that actually looks like. And we've got some sales training videos here on the YouTube channel. I recommend going to check those out. Once you've got a lead service set up, you're going to have some leads coming in. And this ties directly to what we were just talking about of having a process for actually increasing your sales, is you need to develop standard operating procedures. And this part will probably take the longest over the next couple months of your business, because if you're setting things up so that you can get sales and you want to track where those sales are coming from, right? It makes sense that you would do the same thing with your business, right? You want to apply that same exact logic. You need a process, right? When a lead comes in, I call that lead within 10 minutes. Okay, step one. Once I call a lead, I talk to them. I fill out all of their information in my CRM. Okay, step two. Based on where the lead's at, I put them in one of three categories. If they're in this category, I make a task to follow up with them in 1 week. Step three, right? So we set it up the same way. But we want to do the same thing for all the other parts of our business as well. Like when I have a customer and their job starts in 2 weeks, right? The first step is we give them a call 2 weeks out to remind them like, hey, Miss Smith, we're going to be showing up at 8 a.m. 2 Mondays from now. You remember that, right? Awesome. Step two, right? Let the tech know, hey, this is the job you're going to be working on, this is the location, these are all the materials you need to have supplies ready for, right? So we want to develop these systems for running our business, because if it's just us and we're doing everything kind of as it comes to us, what happens is as we start to grow and scale, we fall behind, right? And so I think it's really important that you think through in terms of delivery, in terms of creating a business that's sustainable and consistent. What are the standard operating procedures? What are the things that you do every time for every situation, and how can you categorize those? As a special note within that, you want to develop a systematic process for following up and for calling your leads. Some quick facts that are super important, especially when it comes to sales. So if you call a lead within the first 10 minutes, and they've done some long-term studies on this, you're almost 40% more likely to get that business than somebody that waits more than 10 minutes to call that lead. Okay, that is a significant difference. It is a huge, huge difference. A 40% increase is 40%, right? You went from 100,000 to 140,000. That's big, right? And it's a small, simple thing to do. But you need a process for standardizing the entire system, because if you standardize your interaction with your customers, what that enables you to do is get a lot more clarity on what is working and what is not working. When it's all over the place, when we're doing something different every time, it's almost impossible to know what improvements were made versus what improvements were not, right? We're almost using the scientific method here, right? We want to have we want to have something that is a control in every single study. Like, this stuff's not changing, and then we've got our variables that we're going to test, and you want to do that with your sales same way you would do anything else. The other thing as part of these standard operating procedures is you need a project management tool, because as you grow your business, when you get to the point where you have 4, 5, 6 jobs going on a given week, if you don't have some kind of software or some kind of system for keeping up with all that, you're going to find that balls start getting dropped, customers start getting angry, and you start losing money. And business is amazing when it's working, but when your business costs more than it makes, it's not a fun place to be in. And trust me, it happens. And so you want to have a system for really taking control over every step in your process for your project management. The last step that you want to be thinking about and get ready is you need to review your progress monthly. I would even go so far as to say weekly, especially in the beginning, but 100% you need to review your progress every single month. And the reason this is so important is when you start this business, this is something we kind of refer to as the founder's dilemma. You'll hear people talking about wearing too many hats when they first start. It's like when your business first launches, you have so many things just coming at you, like, oh man, I have to go do the sales thing. Oh, but I also have to do the marketing. And oh, I'm responsible for the accounting. Oh, and I'm also responsible for hiring. And I'm responsible for literally everything in the business. And when you're responsible for that many things, it can become very easy to forget stuff, right? To, be working on something and you put it down and then it's gone. It's gone and it never gets done. It wasn't not important. It just didn't get finished. And so what having a monthly review enables us to do is it enables us to keep our focus on the things that are most important so we can make sure those higher priority tasks always get done. And I know for a fact, we've built multiple 7-figure businesses. Like, we have guys that started with us less than 2 years ago. They're doing over $1 million a year in their business right now. And the reason they've been able to do that is because this monthly review, this consistent looking at and tracking the progress that they're making has been built into their habits. And so if you were going to start and you knew exactly what you want to do, if you follow those 12 steps, that is a incredibly good blueprint for you to be well on track to making a 6-figure business in that first year. And so, guys, I hope you found this video super helpful. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to give us a like or subscribe. If you have any questions, you can send those to support@cabinetstartup.com, and we will see you next time.